Hey Klaus, going through a couple of iterations here trying to figure out the best way to explain this to you clearly. So, first of all, please copy and keep this build as like a version 1, or however you want to do it. I do like these divergent setups. It's not exactly what I had in mind, but it's an iteration of what I had in mind. So I want to make sure it doesn't get overwritten and that it doesn't disappear, because there's a lot of really good scalping opportunities that this thing identifies, and I want to sort of explore that further. Having said that, um, what I failed to communicate to you before is that really what I'm looking at is identifying the lowest print of the real motion. So it's really, the pivots here are more designed to um, calibrate the Midas curves. Um, and what I didn't make clear was that I'm actually looking for the pivot in the real motion indicator as much as I am a pivot in price, and used for slightly different purposes. In this case, this green line identifying the divergence would ideally start here and end here, for instance. Um, and it, um, and the reason is that this is so. I think the reason would be is that this is the lowest current point at at this time, right? And then I'll just say this is the lowest point, and so we'd be looking in here to see where the lowest print is. We'd be using that lowest print number as the key for identifying divergence, not something higher, nothing above it. It basically is the lowest print here. And then also in a given move down, so right at this point, we're breaking a new low. And as soon as that happens, we would be looking at the lowest print. So um, as soon as we break into a new low territory, the lowest print after that point in time would be our key pivot, and again the pivot being in the real motion indicator. I'm hoping that is making sense to you. So we have a low in real motion, and then a little while later um, we break into new low territory, but we do not have a pivot point that is lower than this low. And right now we're getting divergences that are kind of like below. I mean, even if this was the only thing that we are looking at, this piece of time, like this it's kind of got an initial pivot point that isn't even breaking into new high or low territory. And again, I find those useful, but um, it's not what I've been, it's not what I'm trying to identify right now. So I think that just knowing that the beginning of this divergence and where it's identified, this would be modified to starting at the low pivot here and at the low pivot of the real motion indicators here, rather than, on this bar to this bar. And again, it, ideally, hmm, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to originate on the pivot bar. Unfortunately, I know that's just probably part of what you've been working through here. Um, the pivot low would be where you want to calibrate the Midas curve to, essentially. Um, and ideally, if you see right, I'm not even going to get into that. This is more of Midas curve. Once you start integrating the Midas curve, you can see there's the wick low, and then there's the body of the candle low. And in this case, and frequently, having the curve calibrated actually to the body actually is where price will stop. Um, but that's neither here nor there for right now. Bottom line, yeah, if we can try to figure out how to align, get this logic worked into the next iteration of the indicator versus having sort of mid. I mean, this did identify a perfect pivot here, but it's using slightly different logic to get it to identify that divergence. So I really think that's the main thing. If you need more information from me on what the hell I'm talking about, just let me know. Um, I think you probably got it though. Let me know. Thank you. Hey class, I was just thinking about this a little more, and I'm wondering if the way to approach this at this point, since I mean this is going to be integrated with the Midas curves and all that. Um, I'm wondering how valuable it is to identify a specific turning point as much as a zone. And if we're looking for divergences that are making new lows and there's going to be a turn up, once we break into new low territory here, maybe these dots become, you know, a bit bigger and a brighter color, whatever, cyan or something like that, so they stand out. So that whenever there's a cyan dot going on here, we know that that we should be looking for divergence at these points, rather than trying to go, this is the specific spot where it comes into play. I think because really that's what we're trying to do right now, identify, you know, we're looking at this low pivot, we're looking at this low pivot. That sort of ultimately would define the exact divergence, but this whole area right here where we're trading at these, you know, below previous lows, and we don't have a print on the real motion indicator that's below this low, this whole area is a divergence zone. And then when we start bringing the Midas curve into the equation, you know, in this case, it would have to have been calibrated to the low of the body for it to actually get into proximity here. But we would just know that this whole area is a zone, and then if it, you know, once we integrate the Midas curves and other things into the equation, we would just know that, hey, if we're in a zone and it touches a curve, you know, or it gets near a curve, we would get an alert, and then maybe the confirmation, maybe an actual trade signal. Not sure about that, but you know, when we get to that point, it might be on the first green bar after touching a curve, and we're in a, you know, in a divergent zone. I think that might be one way to approach this too. I'll kind of leave it up to you. If you think that we can, you know, basically just get this start point adjusted to over here because of the lowest print in the real motion indicator, which I'm imagining you can, and have it correspond to the lowest point, the lowest real motion indicator here, corresponding to where price is breaking below. So making a new low, and we still don't have a print that's below this previous low. There may be more that I'm not thinking through in terms of identifying the best points here, and but anyway, let me know what you think of that and what problems you see as, you know, possibilities popping up, or if you can just play with programming it in, then we can troubleshoot it once we see the update. Thanks.